Good morning, everybody. Let me start by asking if it's okay if I'm quite upset. Uh, I'm the guy that for several years now, someone at the UU Church has always deemed me the appropriate person to talk to about technology, to bring that discussion, that annual discussion to you. And I'm the one quite upset that we cannot meet in person. And here we are delivering, our thoughts to each other via the technology. But I miss seeing you all. I'm glad to see you here, at least virtually and looking well. So I do want to start, having said that, with a note of gratitude. Seems too obvious to say how dark the last year has been since I spoke with you a year ago. I certainly recognize that I have a lot of advantages in terms of my situation. I've had work and family, friends. So it's certainly possible to be much worse off. And yet, this has been about as bleak a time as I can imagine having. Rather severe ups and downs for me emotionally, and to even just start to think about the scale of suffering or grief experienced by people who are losing family members and can't be there in person to grieve, or unable to see people they haven't seen in a long time and keep in touch. It's truly grim times. It was sort of my go-to joke, for several years that you guys wouldn't possibly have me back because the news I bring is so dark and grim. This year, I've been completely preempted by reality. So it's not like I can bring you a message that is shocking by its darkness. So what do? When you're starting at grim? I sent that title and blurb back a long time ago when the idea of a revolution, seemed kind of fresh. It seemed like, wow, you probably haven't thought of it that way. Well, in the COVID time warp, all this time later, it's probably not even that. I mean, it's just, well, yeah, of course we're in a revolution. I had actually bracketed and put soft revolution. Like, I had to explain this is going on where you can't really see it. Soft, not involving outright violence. But I was like, you better take that out, Wava. Like, it's a revolution actually. So, because we're already there, I'm going to try to bring a little light, as hard as that is. So thank you for that opening. Look for that light. And I think, as with a lot of things, the light is found, with the youth, the younger people. And so I'm going to try to look at how they are looking at it. And so I'm going to try to invoke the concept of play. And I hope we'll find that, in fact, our younger people are playing with the revolution. So that is sort of the take I want to aim for. There is darkness in the middle, but try to keep in mind I'm going to head toward the light the best I can. I'm going to start, however, with sort of where we are. So I'm going to actually share my screen and some images. So let me see if I can just go ahead and make that full size. Now, are you able to see what I'm seeing on my screen? I think I'll give a moment to read. Certainly signal me anything you need read, but this one's short enough, I think I'll read it also. So some Democrats, and this is NBC, some Democrats in Congress are worried their colleagues might kill them. I don't know how to read that. And this is sort of where I'm going to head is things aren't as they seem. I've been so disoriented this year because, as a person who likes to think and figure stuff out, uh, it's proven exasperatingly difficult to do with the messages that we get and see and pass around. And this is just an example, but this kind of has that cutting through the misdirection to say, usually it's implied, but in this case they just say, wait, we're talking about homicide here. Like, so I don't know. I don't know how to read that. I sort of will feel constantly like apologizing. I really kind of hate to share things that are so heavy, but this image, which may turn out to be, the meme of the insurrection, also is this, and again, I should probably notate. So this is that picture of the Viking, from the incursion, siege of our capital. So this picture somehow does capture something really important, but again, it's hard to know which level to cut into it. I'm sort of asking, is this a theatrical production about the insurrection? Had this been the sort of insurrection that I understood, from my history lessons in school, I would expect to see an actual, bleeding head on the end of the pike, like, or a pile of bodies, of the whole family that had been, deposed in a coup. What is this? He looks like an actor, and I don't. When I first heard news of it, my wife Robin called. Oh, have you heard about the? I don't even know what they were calling it at the time, the insurrection. I was like, I don't believe anything I see on social media. I'm going to wait on this one and see what happens over time. And eventually I had to concede something big was happening, because that's all we were hearing about from everybody, not just some channels. But even so, even with the consensus, really, even across, the political spectrum of sources, something like an insurrection happened. And this is the representative. So again, very disorienting for me. Now, at least a couple of years ago, I think part of my message was about challenges posed by social media. And I do think social media has a large role in all this disorientation. And one of my favorite thinkers is Sam Harris. You may or may not know him. He's not an avid Twitter user, and you can see that he has his skepticism about Twitter, because he asks here, if we were in the process of destroying our society through our use of social media, how would you expect your Twitter timeline to look? More or less as it does, or much worse than it does? So I actually participated in that poll, along with over 20,000 other people, and that was just in, 14 hours. So you can see he has a lot of followers. He has a lot of people who pay attention to what he says. And 70% of them, and they tend to skew for sure on the educated side, and 70% of them thinks if we were destroying our society, Twitter would look as it does now, if we were using it to destroy our society. So that, I take that seriously. Among all the things that are sort of hard to read, if a lot of smart people think Twitter would look the way it does now if we're using it to destroy our society, is cause for alarm. And I sort of, calling alarm is tricky, because it is a ploy used by people to kind of assume power. So you always want to make sure that somebody yelling, fire, isn't just trying to cause a commotion or to manipulate you for some of their own purpose. But I think it's cause for alarm. And I think that's one of the lessons that I'm taking from the things that I am seeing and hearing. So I'm going to go back a little bit in time, and also try to use some examples that show that maybe there's a brighter side to this, than what we're seeing. So one of the things Sam Harris was kind of referencing there that I'm sure was understood by his audience was cancel culture, right? This, depending on your point of view, this problem or this, I don't know, solution. If you think people are being inappropriate, you're all for cancel culture. So in any case, here's a post, which is obviously sarcasm. It's humor. It's somebody saying, "Get fired from your job in 5 to 10 years. Join Twitter today." And having taught a lot of student and teachers, of course, they're warned amply. This was one of the first things I had to try to correct, in my role here as the younger person, 15 years ago. Was, the students were warned, get off social media now. You'll just get in trouble for what you post. And I had to kind of step in and say, well, wait a second. This is actually where young people, have a reputation that's worth keeping. So we can't just say get off of it. But this is sort of a play on that, isn't it? It's young people kind of toying with this idea. Wait a second, do we really want to play with this thing as fire? Well, of course they want to play with fire. They're young people. This is their metaphorical fire. When I was a kid, I was a literal firebug, loved to play with fire. That's not a thing anymore, but this is. Now here's an example. So of course I don't follow Proud Boys. I don't see Proud Boys. But if you're thinking, all right, if you're right on the political spectrum and you're kind of using Twitter, where do you go? If you kind of want to see what the messages are aimed at you, and I guess you could go to QAnon, but at least the way we understand QAnon is pretty darn fringe and pretty crazy. So it seems like it's easy to write off. I don't know. Proud Boys, though, well, they're talking about Proud Boys. People who are Proud Boys, maybe they embrace it. I don't know. Maybe it's a real thing. I really don't know. But I looked it up on Twitter. I searched for it. And here's actually what I found, which is interesting. So this is Proud Boys USA, or Proud Boys US. And they are posting, please understand that the Proud Boys trending are disgusting, vile fascists, not the amazing Proud Boys US. When tweeting about the racist Proud Boys, do not assume Proud Boys US are those guys. So this apparently was a little Twitter gamemanship where the Twitter handle Proud Boys was associated with the actual right-wing group. A left-wing group, apparently of gay guys, created a Proud Boys US and took it over. So I don't know. How do you get the messages if you're on the right? I don't know. Again, I'm sort of emphasizing the playful aspect of this. Well, unfortunately, as with a lot of things, play can turn real. And where that cuts in and out is what is so difficult for me to figure out. So here, I just scrolled like barely any, like a few tweets down in the Proud Boys little hashtag, set of tweets. Hi, new followers. We're here, we're queer, and we're anarchists bent on destroying capitalism and civil society as we know it. A better world is possible. Okay, that's a live grenade toss. That's not just a tennis ball or something. Bent on destroying capitalism and civil society as we know it. So if you thought the left was the innocent side, sort of playing it straight, think again. Now, along the same lines, and I actually don't know if this is legit, if General Spaulding is actually on the left and saying this with sincerity, or if he's mocking people on the left who have said similar things. I don't know. That's part of the problem. But if he's playing it straight, he's saying Trump supporters should not be able to buy groceries, get medical treatment. They shouldn't have any services. Now, if you think that it's relief to say this is sarcasm and he's actually, making fun of people on the left, I have seen things like this. Now, not quite as severe, but things like this from the left. So that's serious. And it's not like these are individuals in, the online world, and we can sort of overlook them because, the big forces directing culture will kind of swamp all that toxicity or whatever away. You probably remember Glenn Greenwald, right? It was the whole Edward Snowden affair. Glenn Greenwald won the Pulitzer for working with Edward Snowden to reveal the surveillance being done on U.S. citizens. So I think he's generally quite respected as sort of a tough journalist of integrity. Really truly challenging power. And this is all quite recent that he's posting on social media about the campaigns toward more and more censorship of online platforms. So this is quite insidious, because, again, it would mean that the play is just being pushed further out of our view. Whatever it is being tossed around, we won't see it as well. So you probably knew that, well, of course you knew that Trump was removed from all the social media, but so were a lot of other accounts in that purge. And so there was some talk of going to other social networks, that would make it possible to communicate for people who happen to be on the right or saying things that, for whatever reason, got caught in the algorithm. So like an alternative social media app is called Parler. And apparently that's one that there was some talk about moving to, but it was then removed by the big players, the big tech players. And here, Glenn is pointing out that other sites that make communication possible for private citizens are being targeted. So this is not just play, in other words, between individuals sort of operating at a low level. These are very institutional players all the way up to the major media platforms and all their connections to government. So, heavy. And it should probably remind you of something. And of course, this is pointed out. I'm not the one pointing this out. This is pointed out. This is a common complaint on the right, that we're headed, in the direction of China. But this is a real tweet from the Chinese embassy in the U.S. And I mean, again, I don't know if I need to read it or not. You're probably finishing up reading it. But as sure propaganda as I think you can find, study shows that in the process of eradicating extremism, the minds of Uyghur women in Xinjiang were emancipated and gender equality and reproductive health were promoted, making them no longer baby-making machines. They are more confident and independent. So, again, this was shared by people pointing out, maybe in a playful way, this is where we're headed, with our censorship and government propaganda. Now, on the other hand, there doesn't seem to be any doubt, even well into the right of the political spectrum. I don't know about the extreme right, but across the political spectrum, Trump has accountability for the insurrection, for incitement. Even though, and a lot of my thinking has been influenced by Eric Weinstein. Eric Weinstein and his brother Brett Weinstein are well worth looking into if you need somebody to follow. Anyway, that was a little aside. But as Eric explains in this tweet, Trump not directly saying storm the Capitol does not relieve him of responsibility for essentially, implying storm the Capitol. He said, we're going to stop the steal. We will never give up. We will never concede. And as Eric is pointing out here, you can hold someone responsible for direction, even if it's indirection, even if it has plausible deniability somehow built in, given the right context. So, of course, we understand and have understood that people can say one thing to kind of cover what they really mean. Of course we know that. But this is sort of, the stakes have been ramped up, and we're living in such a virtual, social media mediated world that the complexity is pretty baffling, especially for my generation and older. This is tricky to sort out. What I'm kind of suggesting is the young people, sort of like youth who do dangerous things, it doesn't strike them as being as dangerous as it does us. I think to them some of it is a game, and they're playing at it, and we see the potential and how it has crossed a boundary. They don't necessarily see that boundary as being as fixed as we do. And I think that's the process of play, is figuring out where that boundary is. So for them, that line might not have been as clear as for us. We're like, well, of course he incited them. But for them, it might be, well, maybe he incited us. Maybe we're just going to cause a fuss and put on our little performance and bring out our cell phones. And they just sort of found out it was a softer boundary at the Capitol than who would have expected it to give that easily. And again, I don't claim to know facts about what happened. I'm sort of piecing it together like anybody. But it certainly strikes me as plausible that you kind of go and you push and you throw and you see what happens. And maybe you land in the Capitol. All right, now talk about play. It's unlikely any of you follow Titania McGrath. Titania McGrath is a Twitter handle, somebody that posts to Twitter. Months ago, she posted, "Great news. I've written a book for children. It's called My First Little Book of Intersectional Activism. My next generation must be taught to think exactly like me. Pre-order immediately." Now, you probably, are savvy enough to, oh, wait a second, she's kidding. Like, this isn't a real account. She's what's the term for it? Trolling. People she thinks have gone too far to the left. It turns out this is it's a fake account. It's an inauthentic account. There's no person named Titania McGrath. This is Andrew Doyle. He probably is a left of center person, but he's making fun of people who have gone too far, as he sees it, on the left. Playfully, perhaps, And it's hard for me to authenticate. So here, Titania says, "Nice try, Nazis," because supposedly, and I think Andrew actually got this response for the Titania McGrath account from Twitter. I think this is an actual letter from Twitter. And it says, "Twitter is required by German law to provide notice to users who are reported by people from Germany. We've received a complaint regarding your account, Titania McGrath." And the tweet that got Titania reported said, "Homosexuality is transphobic because it reinforces the myth of a gender binary. So though we must oppose homophobia, we also need to recognize that not being homophobic is a form of transphobia. This really isn't difficult." So again, this is a tweet by Titania trying to make fun of people that she thinks have gone too far. And then it getting spread on Twitter, including the response from Twitter, apparently, to a complaint about the inauthentic account. You can see how this just gets mind-boggling to us and to me and older. But to the young people, this is the play. This is the play that they do online to figure out where the boundaries are. Okay? So this is my hope. I'm hoping this is the truth. This is what's going on. I'm hoping this is not actually headed to a civil war kind of situation. Because this is what it looks like to me, that I'm hoping it's not quite true. And again, I don't really create these ways of looking at it. There's a group of people, at least online, that kind of look at it this way. And again, Eric Weinstein is sort of the one who has caused me to think about it this way more than anyone else. But it's fairly obvious to me, like looking at it now, that this is a good way to look at least the media landscape right now. That depending on which media world you live in, or you inhabit, you get your news from, the world looks one of these two ways, and sort of everything gets captured into these two large narratives. So Eric Weinstein actually labeled it Magistan and Wokistan to refer to these two different worlds. And if you get out, you know this is true. There are people who fall in and they pretty much divide distinctly. If you're in this realm, if you're in the realm of our information ecosystem. So on the Magistan side, it's all the liberal elites. They've rigged the system. It's not fair. And the obviously the election was just an example of this. Everything falls into this, one way or the other. But of course, the election was rigged because, of course, the liberal elites, have been on a 5-year campaign to rig it against Trump. On the Wokistan side, everything is about who's been oppressed or who's doing the oppressing. Any story can kind of be boiled down to that if you live in that media world. Now, again, this seems pretty obvious to me. I think if you're really in one, it's not as obvious. Maybe. I can never tell how straight people in it are playing it. Are they just saying it? Are they playing with it, or do they really think so? I don't even know, and I don't know that there's a good way to know that. I have trouble now listening to news on either side. I try to listen. This has been quite a while ago, before Eric Weinstein had coined the term, Wokistan. But I used to be an avid NPR, junkie, probably like you guys, and professors, The joke was NPR was National Professors Radio. And then I sort of got this idea in my head, well, wait a second, everything seems to sound so similar. So I did an experiment. I was like, I will listen until I hear a story with this overarching narrative that it's all about oppressing or having been oppressed. Well, it turns out there's never more than one story before there's another story with this narrative. So I kept turning off the radio. There are no other ways to look at it if you're really in that world. And of course, both of these have enough truth to get them off the ground, right? The problem is you can't explain everything with this way of looking at it. There's lots of other variables in the system that often are more interesting and more important to figuring out what's really going on. But in any case, I hesitate to even do this, honestly, because it just gets me in trouble. I think a large reason we get the impression that everything divides into one or the other camp is because you do get in trouble. You lose friends. You get fired. People don't know where you stand, kind of thing. And I think either you have to have figured out, a position that doesn't depend on an organization being happy with you, and or you have to not be that inclined to need a large group of friends who accept you, including on political terms. So it's sort of an interesting combination you have to, I don't know, not be in one or the other camp. But here are some actual headlines from 2020. Again, I don't know if I need to read them or not, but this is the kind of thing that I mean, that it all has to be seen from the perspective of being in an oppressed category. And I really have a pet peeve on this last one. COVID-19 has been hardest on women. This is a story that kind of won't die. I keep saying this. It's just opposite. The mortality is significantly higher for men. I can't remember if the rate of illness is higher or not, but the mortality is significantly higher, and this is universally everywhere. So men are dying at a greater rate. Anyway, the bigger point is when everything is sort of shoehorned into this category, you're going to lose your ability to actually think clearly about what's going on. I'm not even going to do that. I don't know how long I've been at this, but now to the lighter side. So I put news in scare quotes here. So these are spoof headlines. You know, they were made up to make fun of the other headlines. Probably from The Onion. I don't even remember. British petition to rename the actually white cliffs of Dover. The old name being a microaggression against people whom white does not describe. You know, these are supposed to be humorous, poking fun and figuring out where that boundary is, figuring out who you could bring to your side without sort of maybe revealing yourself, something like that. And the last one from Titania's account. And the reason that she's posting about this is because a trick that has sort of emerged to let the censorship of the social media platforms happen on both sides is that, well, they're not like utilities. You know, the Facebook and Twitter, they're private companies. So of course they can control the content of their sites. And that's a clever strategy because, of course, the people on the right like the idea of private ownership. And supposedly the people on the left are trying to figure out how to censor out things they don't want to hear. So Titania says private companies should be allowed to do whatever they want as long as they are doing what I want them to do. So again, just a humorous, at least an attempt at humor. And from pretty recently, January 13th, yeah, that's just not even a week ago, Elon Musk says legalize comedy. Now, Elon Musk is notorious for cryptic tweets. So if I could leave you with one word, this is like that movie, The Graduate, with Dustin Hoffman. You remember the scene where the helpful older person comes and says to the young graduate at the graduation party, one word, plastics. Remember that from that 1960s movie? This is like that. One word would be crypto. My last word to you, crypto. Enough said? Crypto? Now, it could mean, yeah, to go buy some cryptocurrency. That could be a good tip, actually, for the revolution. But it also means look out for the cryptographically encoded messages online, because these kids are playing. These young people are playing. And so figuring out, you know, what people actually mean is not at all straightforward, especially if you're not yourself young. And I count myself in the not myself young category for sure. But let's hope that's what they're up to and that they're going to figure it out. Last slide. This also gives me hope. There is a Flat Earth Society, okay? It's a thing online, Flat Earth Society, believe it or not. It's a real entity. Now, do they really believe that the Earth is flat? I don't know. One of their posts says, you know, the Flat Earth Society has members all around the globe. Go figure. They've got members all around the globe. I think they're trolling us, and maybe we should let them have their laugh. I don't know. Okay, so I will end my remarks there. Make of it what you will. We'll see if you invite me back next year.